We've all had moments during our adolescence where we were hit with whiplash. Maybe it was frolicking around the backyard like Angelina the ballerina, or running Naruto ninja style who could move faster than an Olympian. Oh wait, that was just me. But out of all the insanity of craziness that I endured during my youth, nothing would compare to the era of reality TV. I loved it. Every second of it. From Worst Cooks of America, The Glee Project, Kids Baking Championship, Love Island, The Voice, America's Got Talent, So You Think You Can Dance, you name it, I absorbed it. But one title would rise above the rest that would alter my brain chemistry for me, and as well as many people. Ah yes, we have the iconic, often imitated, but never equaled, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders making the team.
It takes a very special woman to wear the most iconic uniform in the world.
I want this, I'm pretty sure, more than anybody else.
But before you slip on the boots, you need to earn it.
Girl, I don't even know where to begin with making the team. It was something. I'm sure many of you are very aware or familiar with the Netflix documentary that premiered in the summer of this year that drew a lot of eyeballs and a lot of critiques. It peeled back the layers of heavy makeup, Lucchese boots, the Star-Spangled Banner blasting throughout the scene, and really showed us who the DCC are as individuals outside of the organization, essentially feeding them lines. In contrast, making the team was pure camp and competition. It was feisty, it was energetic, and it was brutal to go through that training camp, as well as committing many sins against its viewers.
2 years ago, our entire organization got sucker punched over this incident. So Whitney goes to a private Halloween party. She dresses like Lil Wayne. That was on a Saturday night. Sunday at the game, I was getting phone calls and cameramen were photographing Whitney on the sidelines because Whitney's Halloween costume was considered controversial.
Excuse me.
So what makes me even remotely qualified to talk about this? Well, for those of you who don't know, I was a competitive dancer and also did jazz, hip hop, pom, and kick back in the day. So I am pretty familiar with the DCC style in terms of choreography. I've also been an avid fan of making the team and DCC for a very long time and can quite literally quote verbatim things from making the team. So sit back, get you something to drink, and let's begin. DCC Making the Team started its run in 2006 and premiered on the TV network CMT. The series filled in the market for reality talent-based competition shows where hopefuls aspire to achieve their dreams in a certain field. Think of America's Got Talent, American Idol, So You Think You Can Dance, The Voice, etc., etc. At the time, however, Making the Team was very unique for centering on the experiences of NFL cheerleaders, as well as the organization paving the way for cheerleaders to be able to dance on the sidelines of NFL games. It's important to note that NFL cheerleading and all-star cheerleading are extremely different avenues. NFL cheerleading is primarily pom dancing choreography that you would often see in dance teams, drill teams, spirit teams, and the like. Whereas all-star cheerleading is focused on tumbling, gymnastics, and acrobatics. Anyway, CMT collaborated with Kelly Finglass and Charlotte Jones to create the reality show that we all know and sigh at. So what's the typical audition process for the DCC squad? Well, the first few episodes center on the 3 initial round of auditions: prelims, semis, and finals. These phases are just the tip of the iceberg and serve as intrigue and eye candy for the audience before delving into the meat of the series.
Hi, how are y'all doing today? My name is Sophia Swan. I'm from Austin, Texas, 27 years old, and I'm just truly blessed to be here, ashy ankles and all. I'm just happy.
The first few seasons of auditions were particularly funny and interesting because the entire thing is camp. The outfits, the interviews, the combos the girls were taught, just peak cinema for women entertaining the male gaze. In the present day, however, the overall appeal of the cheerleaders and the requirements really lean into the dancers having to be very technical, precise, and studio trained in some capacity. The DCC during the early seasons of auditions weren't always the best dancers, because being a DCC is more than a dancer.
You need to be able to have the cheerleaders be able to be so many things: a performer, a spokesperson, an ambassador, a model.
And this is reflected within the extensive audition process. The first round prelims consists of hundreds of girls, usually dispersed in groups of 5, improving for around 60 to 90 seconds. There would also be the American Idol style contestants who weren't qualified to audition. And the comments given to them in the early seasons of making the team were so unhinged.
There are some that you do wonder, does she really think she can fit in the uniform?
After prelims, the applicant pool gets significantly cut from the several hundred to around 100 something, where now they have to learn 8 counts of DCC choreography and perform it back to the judging panel. The true test to see who has what it takes, however, comes in finals. Everyone has to go through a panel interview with all the judges, and they ask the most patriotic questions imaginable.
Who's the commander-in-chief?
Already, first question. Put me in the hot seat. That'd be our President Obama.
Who was the Democratic Party nominee for the 2012 presidential election?
I don't know.
All right, yikes.
This is also where you get to see the dancers showcase their talents as they get to perform a solo presentation, as Kelly would say. And honestly, some of those girls and the talents they have could be doing other things than being a cheerleader, in my opinion. Another aspect that starts to become questioned in relation to auditioning is when the TV show started airing, did the audition process lose its authenticity and integrity? This is where things start to get a bit messy. There will always be some fabrication or alteration when it comes to reality TV. They need drama, storylines, certain characters, and sometimes people gotta bring up a great white lie for that to be achieved. Now, this isn't a bad thing in theory, of course, but it does beg the question on how exclusive the process can be when the show started airing. Can anyone truly audition for the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders if they are 18 and a high school graduate? Well, I want to say yes, but the answer is most likely no. But now that we've sort of debriefed what DCC is, I'm primarily going to be focusing on one particular season. I may do other seasons in the future if this video ends up doing really well, but for today we're going to focus on the forgotten season, in my opinion, which is 5. So we start this season rather abruptly since the first 5 seasons only had 30-minute episodes. Girls are lining up outside awaiting to audition, and this is where we get to meet some of the true contenders. Caitlin LeGrand, who was 18 years old at the time, Lauren Williams, who formerly danced at UT Austin and clearly became a very huge name in the DCC. However, for this stage, the most vital candidate and probably the most polarized candidate has to be Stephanie Heyman.
This is my best friend, Stephanie Heyman, and we have been best friends since 2nd grade. We grew up in Florida together, and I've been trying to get her out with me every year. Good luck, girl. Okay, I'll call me. All right. A lot. I mean, like every 5 minutes or like 3 minutes.
This was actually the first time all of the candidates were in the new stadium. From like seasons 1 through 4, they were in Texas Stadium. And then this was really the first season where they were like auditioning. I guess season 4 they were at like the Gaylord Texan, but in the 5th season anyway, they were actually auditioning in that stadium. So that kind of marks a different era of DCC. Of course, we can't leave out the dumpster fires that elicited some of the most deranged comments, with ageism to boot.
There's some people that show up and honestly, we're like, is she serious? But she is serious.
There are some girls that show up that I think, have you seen our uniform?
2, 3, turn around. Don't you watch me now, just turn around. Touch your knees, don't look, just...
We did have some more mature candidates today.
I've been a Cowboys fan all my life, and since I'm 47 years old.
It's admirable that they still have the courage, to be out here. But at some point, when you look over and there are 18-year-olds competing for the same thing that you are, it's time to move on to your next passion.
Ageism is something pretty common in the entertainment industry, but especially within the dance industry, it becomes a lot more prominent. I think the main interesting thing when it comes to age, when it comes to DCC, is that they don't really have an age limit, but in their heads, it's very obvious that they do. And that's like another big thing that DCC has gotten a lot of flack for, which I definitely do agree, is that oftentimes when it comes to the age of the girls that are auditioning, they usually want to cap it to like 30. Even if you watch the documentary, you watch Anisha, and a lot of the judges were super like surprised and shocked that she was 30 and auditioning because she didn't like look it, and so they couldn't really cut her for age. But past contestants on DCC have been cut for age. But like any seasons, we have the comeback girls who are trying out again. It's pretty common for a lot of these candidates to audition multiple years. It takes years to make a professional dance team. So when you see girls trying out like 2, 3, 4, 5 times, this is pretty common, especially for an NFL cheer squad like the DCC that is notoriously selective. You had contestants this year such as Rachel, Alyssa, Kami, Grace, she deserved better. Ashley, Kinley, Megan, Miranda, the list. There was a lot of people that re-auditioned that year. Prelims are over now, so Kelly, alongside Judy and Charlotte, they go through all of the applications and discuss their thoughts on each of the candidates. And now we enter into the semifinals. When the girls are starting to do the semis round and they're like performing for the judges, they actually didn't perform with palms this time, which, to be fair, this was pretty common in the early seasons. But since in season 4 the girls actually did perform in palms, it was a bit bizarre that they didn't perform in palms in season 5. This round was kind of also the tipping point for Kami, who apparently was pulling another girl down during the kick line. Unfortunately, due to this, Kami ends up getting nicked. She is cut and out, which particularly makes me sad because I believe this was her 3rd time auditioning. In my opinion, I really think Kelly should have just ended up keeping Kami in season 4 because they literally brought the girl in a month like after the training camp and then they just cut her at the end. She was the last cut and they didn't keep her. And I understood the cut, but at the same time, she had the look, she was beautiful, she was gorgeous. You might as well have kept her. But pretty much everybody else who was in the comeback sequence did end up making it to the finals. And Kelly and Judy usually call out the girls for semis and they all like line up outside like the palm area where they were dancing. And now we're on finals, which is honestly my personally favorite round of the whole audition. It is so much fun. It is amazing to see all the girls get to perform their solos. It's my favorite part of the auditions. And this is where we get to meet Kitty Carter, who is the technical coach for the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders. She was also a former cheerleader in the 70s, I believe. And she helps them with the combo they learn and their solos. This is actually where we get to meet our first woman of color this season.
My name is Paula Tavares. I'm 18 years old and I'm from Cali, Colombia. I moved here about 4 years ago. I didn't speak the language. I couldn't make friends. I love dancing. Dancing has been my entire life.
And during this solo round in particular, you could kind of almost see the angle of where they were gonna take Stephanie with.
Why are you so nervous right now?
I'm just out of breath.
You're out of breath? So you're out of shape.
You see how production is already trying to make us think that Stephanie is like underqualified. And then afterwards, we get to see the panel interviews. During the first couple segments, you usually see some veterans that are talking. You have like Joanna and Amy Reese. And then Kelly kind of narrates what I'm looking for. They need to be smart. They need to be well educated. The funniest thing about this interview was Kelly actually told every girl who did that interview in one segment that they had to say the national anthem.
Line by line, starting with you, say the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see? Oh, that's our national anthem. Star Spangled Banner is
By the dawn's early light.
so proudly.
The main interview in this season that probably like drew the most ire had to be Kinley's interview.
So Kinley.
Oh, here we go.
I will confront Kinley that she walked out on training camp last year. I think it's too important to ignore.
You know, I'm not your biggest fan right now. How can you defend yourself?
For those who are not aware of the Kinley situation, she was another one who re-auditioned. In 2009, she was the reigning Miss Lafayette, and her sister Lacey also auditioned. They kind of had like a sister storyline. The show probably loved that, so they brought them, of course. And they left training camp the last year because their pageant had commitments with training camp, which honestly was very bizarre that they did do both. Especially Kinley doing it at that time because her thing was in June and training camp starts in June. So Judy was literally on her ass because she just left training camp and then she re-auditioned. So the solos this round were so short. I don't even recall the solo round even being this short. You barely saw any solos that season. They had Trisha Trevino start doing her solo first, and then Paula does one, and then we have Liz Reuter. We're gonna get into Liz Reuter because, girl, do I have a lot to say about the way she was treated that season. Kelly and Judy and Charlotte and all the judges make comments, and then all of them come back and they talk about all the contestants. And they only talked about a few, which actually made the cuts from the training camp from all those like comeback girls so much more bizarre because quite a few comeback girls didn't end up making the training camp that season. Ashley Kelly didn't make it back. Grace Sells didn't make it back. Kenley didn't make it back. Grace Sells not making it back kind of annoys me because I guarantee the reason why she didn't get brought back was because of the weight requirement, which that in and of itself has a whole load of issues. Ashley Kelly not making it back really didn't make sense because I thought she performed well at the finals. But now we are in training camp. Training camp is the big pivotal moment in this season where things actually start to uptick and we get introduced to everybody. Kelly goes over the guidelines and then we have the first night of training camp. Kelly's already making little snippet comments about Liz.
Elizabeth Reuter, you look chunky in your middle. You will have assignments with Jay.
This first rehearsal is so different than auditions because you're not trying to get anyone's attention. You don't want to be called out.
They usually do a kick line, like a kick line all the way down the room, and then afterwards they turn sometimes. That was mainly an early season thing. I don't think I ever saw them do turns after, but they do like pirouettes. And the infamous one for me would be Judy yelling,
It just went downhill from there, so that's not good.
well, I guess the second one could be Ashley Morant going through the turns and then Judy having to actually get up and tell her how to do the turn step by step. That to me will never not be memorable. That moment is ingrained in my brain completely. So then after the first night, there really isn't too many things that become very noticeable. The girls have like a little alumni seminar and with like hosted by Brooke. And Shelly comes in, other former cheerleaders come in to talk about their experiences, and it seemed really nice and fun. A really cool appearance that they had in that season was, I think they had like a Good Morning America appearance. A person like won a chance to beat the DCC, and so she got to experience the whole game day. She got to go across the field. She got to learn the combination. She did the kick line. She got to wear the uniform. It was like a very fun, happy moment, and the training camp candidates are all baby-eyed. They're like, oh my god, I could possibly be a DCC and doing all these appearances. So cool. We get some of our first office visits, and they ended up calling in Nicole Bolcher, who would become very big in DCC. They called in Ashley Brandt, and then they called in Liz. Starting with Ashley. Ashley was mainly called in because she is lacking dance experience, but she really worked hard, had a great personality, had a great look. Probably why she ended up making it through. And the next office visit was with Liz, who was one of my favorites. I'm gonna be a little biased here. She was one of my favorite training camp candidates out of the entire Making the Team history. She was amazing, beautiful technical dancer, and they called her in to tell her that she needs to lose weight. Nicole was mainly called in because she's lacking power and precision in her dancing, and she needs to like bump it up, otherwise you're not gonna make it past the first month. And then some of the following cuts in that season particularly were definitely very hard to watch. Liz ends up going with Jay to do some working out, some conditioning, so that she can get her body in check. And let me tell you, Liz worked her absolute butt off. She worked her tail off to lose that weight. She was meeting with Jay all the time.
I am currently a teacher. All right, everyone, tonight you have homework for language arts.
After Liz's little workout, we get to see one of the more iconic parts of the season, and every season, is where all the training camp candidates get to try on the iconic beloved DCC uniform that is custom tailored to their body that they don't even get to keep.
Today I'm here for my uniform fitting, and I'm very, very excited because this is the first time we get to put it on. Oh, I can't wait to try that on. And
We will size them in a blouse, vest, and shorts and make a custom uniform for each rookie candidate.
And again, Liz was just she was always getting hit, beaten, battered for her weight.
Okay, what size are these? These are mediums. Okay, this is what you get to say goodbye to with Jay.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
by the way,
Kelly wants everyone to look good in the uniform, so everything she says is just a helpful critique.
she's in a medium. You want her in a large short. Right now she's gonna have to. I mean,
I'm working on it.
I'd say yes. Let's go up and then size it down.
Afterwards, they had more rehearsals, and this is where Ashley Brandt kind of loses it for Kelly and Judy, since she's not picking up choreography as fast, and she ends up being the first cut.
Ashley?
My nature is to give people opportunities and chances and develop them. What's against us in this situation of training camp is always time. We don't have time with some of the strugglers.
You're probably one of the least trained dancers in the room.
Mm-hmm. We wanted to see you in training camp, and now that we have, our observations are that your kicks are way low, and we don't need to spend any more time evaluating you.
Alongside Ashley Brandt, we get a couple more interviews, one with Rachel, who auditioned in season 4, and Kelly's in the office telling her that she needs to dance like the stronger veterans, like Kelsey or Ashton at the time. Even the reasoning for Rachel needing to improve always felt kind of weird, since they were framing it in that way instead of just more power. She needs to have more style instead of it just perform like a strong veteran, even though she's a training camp candidate. Paula ends up getting called in at one point, and they kind of start talking to her about her memory and needing to pick up choreography. She definitely was one of the slower learners in the training camp. I mean, she was 18 when she auditioned. Obviously, that's a lot. That's a lot of choreography for an 18-year-old. Kelly really liked her look. Kelly always said she's sexy and beautiful. You could say that Paula was like Kelly's girl crush that season. Kelly has a lot of them. Go through a list. There's a lot of girl crushes Kelly has, and I think Paula was like the season 5 version of that. The next segment veterans in particular weren't really too notable. Unfortunately, Rachel does end up getting nixed, which that made me kind of sad, but it was expected. I felt like it was just inevitable for her. And it made me really sad because Rachel was so sweet. She was so sweet and so kind, very professional, and she didn't really let DCC define her either. She like really wanted to do it, but I feel like Rachel's smart, accomplished enough that she could do many things outside of DCC. You definitely start to notice the people Kelly and Judy start to put on the team. It's the ones that like want it really, really bad, and maybe not as many of the ones that are just, I just want to do this and try out for fun. I kind of did skip over the makeover parts of this season, but they weren't really super memorable. A lot of them, they kept the same hair. The only ones that was pretty different was Liz. Liz got like a really interesting, cool cut. I actually liked what they did with Liz's hair. And then we get into probably the most controversial episode, which is, I think we're on episode 6 now. I'd argue it's actually one of the more controversial episodes of Making the Team, in my opinion, just because of a lot of the stuff that happened off camera with some of the dancers, specifically the veterans. So this was when they were doing the photo shoot. They do their cameo photo shoots for when they're in uniform. This is what they use when they're in the stadium. They have the stuff on the wall. And this is where you kind of start hearing comments about Stephanie being heavy.
She's heavy. That's why we're constantly on them for their weight and to make sure that they're the perfect package for us.
They were really on the girls who had like weight issues during that time.
I think she got her chubby cheeks. I don't think she looks heavy there. I swear, all her audition pictures of us, she was so sexy.
That was 2 months ago.
And I'm gonna fight for her for a while.
But I'm still saying she needs a year to grow up.
I have a hard time cutting Liz because of her weight right now, because I think there's some veterans that shouldn't have made it back because they didn't keep their weight off.
Judy especially was one that really pulled for Liz. I honestly believe the reason why Liz stayed as long in training camp as she did was because of Judy, because I felt like Judy was like outright telling Kelly, no, you're not pulling her right now. However, this is where things start to take a little turn because the veterans that season started to get a lot of comments about their weight. They were coming at Meredith, who is a 4th-year veteran. They were coming at Jordan, which that honestly did not make sense for me. They commented on Amy Reese, who actually ended up getting cut for some other reasons. Apparently, some people online, mainly on Reddit, were kind of talking about how Amy was drinking. She ended up getting released because of that, because the DCC have stuff in their contract where they're not allowed to like drink alcohol, and they have to maintain the same weight that they are at the auditions, which is probably one of the more cursed parts of Making the Team. And then they also commented on Megan Sharp, who is a 4th-year veteran. Megan mentioning the weight that kind of always bothered me was that it was very well aware for people that Megan was dealing with a health condition that made her gain weight. It wasn't her just like being sloppy. In my opinion, I do think DCC needs to up the age when it comes to like the people who try out for the squad. I think they need to up the age to 21 instead of 18, because I feel like women's bodies, or anybody's bodies for that matter, they mature at that age and they don't really start finishing developing till you're in your early 20s. So I just think it's better to up the age instead of like telling girls who started at 18 and they're like in their 20s and that they need to lose weight when it's probably just their body maturing. And then Kitty comes back. Kitty comes back that episode and watches all the girls do the combos, and yep, Kitty gets real. A lot of the girls get eliminated that episode. Megan Flaherty, who came back that season, gets eliminated in probably one of the most iconic cuts ever. It's everywhere. You see it everywhere. They were also commenting again about Courtney, which I kind of didn't really talk too much about because I feel like her stuff was mainly memory and her presence was more prominent in later seasons. But Courtney was released again due to her rushing when she was dancing. To my sad dismay, Liz Reuter was cut from training camp. And this cut actually, when I first watched it, it actually made me cry. I was actually in tears when this first happened because Liz worked her ass off And Liz even said during her cut that she actually wished she would have been cut earlier rather than going through most of the audition process. It also just kind of bugs me when it comes to girls like Liz or Grace Lee Sells, girls that just usually have like some weight issues, is that Kelly and Judy can see the girls' weight at auditions and they can assess whether that weight will work for their organization or not. And bringing girls in and telling them to lose weight when they know that it's just not attainable in the time period they're asking is just probably what wakes me the most like gassed about it. And I think for many people as well. I think now they're definitely doing a better job. If a girl has a weight issue, they don't even bring them into training camp. I think that's better. And you definitely can actually see, Kelly's talked about it in interviews where she is trying to cast girls that have a curvier frame and they're slightly better with the body diversity, which I kind of do see. There's like a few curvier girls. So now the next episode is the field rehearsal where all of them are on the field practicing. Caitlin Johnson starts getting on the radar. She was like sort of on the radar for a little bit, but she really started getting on the radar this episode. Paula really starts buckling under the pressure and gets really on the radar. The last part of the episode was when all the training camp candidates went back, and this was probably some of the most this era of the episode was so, my brain was kind of mind boggled because girls that were barely on the radar just got on the radar this episode, and then they were like, oh, I forgot. Quick thing, Mandy also gets some attention for her kicks out of the blue and saying how she wasn't able to keep up as the anchor position. Crazy because she was not on the radar at all and was actually a good performer. But now they're back at the studio. They're all getting ready for a rehearsal. Kelly's preparing herself because she has to like make the final cut for the team. And whether they like it or not, the squad photo was literally the next day. That was just crazy that they had all those girls and then we're going to cut some people. And it's the day before the team was going to be announced. Some of the girls kind of crack and buckle. They were really on Caitlin Johnson. They were really on Paula. They were really on Mandy. And they were also like really, really on Stephanie. So Kelly and Judy then go into the office to talk about all the girls that are left in training camp. And they needed to make their like last cuts. They had, I believe, 38 girls left. So if they wanted to get to their usual number, which is 36, they only had to cut 2 girls. Did they cut 2 girls? No. So Kelly and Judy kind of continue talking about girls who are on the radar, and they talk about like other girls who were barely mentioned at all. They kind of talked about like Anne on the radar for some reasons for certain things. Judy always talked about how she liked watching Stephanie and she was a great performer.
I enjoy watching Stephanie, but I'm mad at her. I want her to be great, and I can't help her with her weight.
And this was always something that made me very confused with the Making the Team fandom, because a lot of people tend to think that Stephanie was only let in to training camp because of her relationship with Brooke. If you watch the show, that's really not true. You could see Stephanie as a very powerful, strong dancer, especially looking at her jump splits. Stephanie probably had some of the highest jump splits I think I've ever seen on DCC. And then they go in for the cuts. They have 5 girls in the office. Caitlin Johnson, Mandy, Stephanie, Paula, and Brittany Schramm, who just basically got on the radar the last episode 6, and then she got on the radar in 7. And of course, we all know Brittany Schramm. She's an icon. She made the team later. But unfortunately, she was the first one called in, and she was cut. Even though she did really well. And Kelly and Judy were like, you do really well, you're pretty, you're a good dancer. And then they had a but. They think her style was awkward, and they used that as justification for her cut. And then they brought in Paula, and Paula ends up getting cut as well. That one did make sense. And then they brought in Caitlin Johnson. She was also cut. I guess was a little understandable, but I think she was relatively strong. But I did understand her cut in a way. And then they brought in Mandy, you know, the powerhouse. And she was cut because of her height. This is also so funny to me when I look back on this and I see people get very angry over Ari, who was in the documentary, got cut because of her height, when we've seen girls on DCC be cut because of their height. But it's also hypocritical too, because you have girls like Mackenzie Lee, who was on the squad in 2011. You also have like Joanna, who was literally on the squad at the same time, who were also like pretty tiny, that still ended up making the squad. Even if I go like as recently as like Lisa, who was on the 2019 team. They've had shorter girls on the squad. Although some can argue that it just depends on the height of the girls, which like, I guess, but cutting Mandy because her height didn't work, And then Stephanie gets brought in and she gets berated on for her weight again because in training camp she's apparently gained weight, but Kelly and Judy are like, we see progress with you, so they ended up keeping her, which I think some people tend to think Stephanie is a very blatant example of inconsistency when it comes to DCC, because some people tend to think that since her weight was fluctuating, she shouldn't have made the team. But in my opinion, Stephanie was one of the strongest rookies that season alongside like Olivia. She was very, very strong technically, and once again, I feel like that ended up saving her in the end because of how strong she was. And she also made show group too. That also made it very weird where they were gonna cut her if she made show group. Like, there's so many inconsistencies with Kelly and Judy with Stephanie, it's weird. And I think this also is pretty interesting because the next episode is when they do the squad photo. And Allie, who was like a 4th year veteran at the time, was like super duper 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 excited to see Stephanie, which I guess makes it seem as though she didn't know Stephanie was gonna make the team or be there for squad photo, because they didn't even announce the squad until right before they took the photo, which I think just makes the whole announcement feel so unsatisfying because it just felt so stressful. The girls couldn't even be like happy or jump up and down because they were about to take the photo. Like, it wasn't the best announcement at all by far. They had the calendar shoot. I think this was maybe one of the first seasons where we really got to see an in-depth calendar shoot with all the girls. I would end this video here, but there's something else I kind of want to mention real quick. After this season ended and finished, one of the girls who ended up re-auditioning for her 2nd year as a veteran, who I honestly really wondered what happened to her, was Olivia. I didn't really mention Olivia throughout much of the video because she really wasn't a focal point except for one show group performance at the end of the season. But essentially, Olivia did not make it back in the following season, and her appearance was just basically omitted, and we didn't get to see what happened to her. Some Reddit people have kind of speculated that Nepo Baby had something to do with that. This is all just speculation, alleged. I don't know if it's true, but since I've seen those comments repeatedly, I don't know. And the fact that she didn't make it back and she was one of the strongest dancers, I don't know. It makes you think at least. Hi, this is editing me here. I found something online about Olivia starting a brand new dance studio. And it's essentially a place to kind of destigmatize how competitive dance culture can be. So I'm really happy to see that Olivia is doing well, but yeah, that's Olivia's update. Yeah, that pretty much wraps up season 5. If you couldn't tell, this video was all over the place and I didn't really have a script for this, so I was just kind of like talking off the cuff because I needed to get my thoughts out there. But let me know what your thoughts are on Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders making the team season 5. Let me know if you want me to cover like other seasons of making the team, because I think it'd be so fun. And I haven't really seen any sort of person talk about the making the team show, so I'm super excited. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. And that's it. Okay, bye.